Good evening, guys. Thank you so much for coming to the special February 26th Board of Ed meeting. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice.
Good evening, guys. We're joined by 5 of our trustees, our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney, our assistant superintendent for curriculum and finance, Mr. Robert Haas, our assistant superintendent for finance and operations, Ms. Carrie Lachlan, and our assistant superintendent for personnel and PPS, Ms. Emily Ekstrom. We are here tonight to discuss the tax levy. We need to provide a tax levy for the state and for the paper. Obviously, this is not something that's locked in. That'll be something done at our one of our meetings in April, but I'll give it over to Dr. Harney to set the stage for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. But just first, before I do that, I would be remiss if I didn't thank, you may have heard we had some snow recently. So really, I'd just like to thank Mr. Borchfield, my first joke, Mr. Borchfield and our buildings and grounds crew. They have been at it for days, and they really have done a tremendous job. And they're continuing to be at it. We'll probably be moving snow for a couple of weeks now, but I really just got to thank them publicly for all they've done. Again, it is never an easy situation, but they really did a great job. So I'd just like to thank them before we move on. So, okay. So really tonight is, first of all, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to move the Board of Ed meeting from Tuesday to tonight. And really what we wanted to do here, and I'm going to hand this over to Ms. Lachlan in a second, is the last board meeting we had talked about where we kind of gave an overview of where we were financially, the updates that we had received in terms of state aid. Nothing in terms of that information has changed, but we will do a quick refresher on that. But one of the things that Ms. Lachlan had talked about that we need to do through the comptroller's office is by March 1st, we have to submit basically a projected tax levy. I'll call it that. It does not mean that we're locked into anything by any means. As we know, the board has not adopted a tax levy. We're just wanted to talk about what we'd be comfortable putting in there at that time. We still have a good amount of work to do on our end as we're finalizing pieces, but we do need to submit something. And because we had talked about where we had a negative allowable tax levy for this year, we do know that we're going to have to go above that. So it's something that we wanted to talk about here in public so we can have that conversation. And again, we will submit something really within the next day or two. I mean, it's February 26th, so we have until March 1st to submit that. Again, it does not mean we're locked into anything. It just means that that's what's going to be in Newsday for the first time, but we have to have that information out there. So we wanted to be able to do that tonight. And I should have talked about this a little bit, just as a side note, as I'm going to then turn it over to Ms. Lachlan. One of the other things we've started this year, we started a legislative committee, and we are going to start to meet with some of our local legislators. We have our first on Monday. So our group has been together a couple of times, and we're meeting again tomorrow, again, to kind of paint the picture of the things that we are facing here in Bayport Blue Point. So that is just something on a side note that I do think it's important that people are aware of, because it kind of plays into what we're going to be talking about tonight in terms of where we are with the tax levy. So with that, if no one has any questions for me about that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lachlan, who will do kind of an overview, and then we'll put a recommendation forward where we think we are right now as of February 26th, and then we'll go from there. All right, Ms. Lachlan, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. So if you recall at our last presentation, we did review our current levy limit, which is the negative 0.761%, and that's primarily due to the debt that expired this school year, into next school year. Our current budget, we are short in revenue by just under $3 million. This current year, we had proposed a levy of 3.451%, but we actually only ended up levying 0.249%, and that was a result of a final review of the levy prior to setting the levy in October with some miscalculations that had taken place. So our revenue overall, just by that change in calculation, is just about 1.9 million under what we had planned for in this current school year. So that rolls into next year being short in revenue. As Dr. Harney said, state aid numbers we've seen so far, it's only a 1% increase in foundation aid at this point in time. There is potential for another 1% to maybe be seen in foundation aid, but other than that, we're not expecting much more coming through in that area. So we will require to balance this budget numbers over that negative 0.761. We are looking at every 0.5% increase to the levy is $310,000. So at this point, that 2.9 million, that number will be coming down as we continue to work through the budget. We have to finalize BOCES, which we received right before the break. We're working through that request and those numbers right now, as well as finalizing our staffing projections for next year. So with those things, we will see some changes in the larger portions of the budget. But for now, as we went through last presentation, our administration side, buildings and grounds, transportation, debt and benefits are all pretty much locked in. We've received all that information as it relates to that. So the only things that are going to really change now is staffing and our BOCES budget, which is primarily a lot of our software and technology programs that we're purchasing through BOCES for support. So in order to report to the controller, we will report that our allowable levy limit is that negative 0.7, and then we do have to check the box what we will be using, if we'll be staying at that number or going beyond it for the 26-27 school year.
So with that being said, one of the things is, and Ms. Loughlin kind of just spoke about it a little bit, is one of the things is when we came into this year, and when the budget was built back at this time last year, obviously we had a couple million built in there in terms of the revenue that obviously was not accounted for now due to the miscalculation. So where we are though, and this year, one of the things that we committed to, and I want to say it was in September, October, when this was discovered, was that we were not going to touch any programs this year. And I'm happy to say we have not done that. We've maintained everything that we said that we were going to do back in October. But again, leaving that is we're still looking at that revenue. Now, we were able to fill a large piece of that revenue gap with the solar project, which we knew, which late in the summer we had found out that we were going to get a refund or a rebate back on that. So that has been applied. But something to remember that's important to remember, that's a one-time piece of revenue. So, right, so we have to be able to continue to maintain that. So as we're looking at this year is we had proposed to the community back in May, 3.45, and ends up around a 0.25. So we're not looking to do that again this year, but what we are thinking at this present time, based on everything that we know, we're still playing around with staff a little bit. We'll do a presentation to the board on staff, probably the March 31st date, which is about normal for us. As you know, we had done a retirement incentive, which allows us to predict for the next 5 years now. So we know where we're going to fall in terms of that, which allows us, which we've done the last couple of years as well, to take out a look at our numbers and see if there's an opportunity not to replace positions here through attrition while still maintaining all of our programs and everything that we do and that we love so much here in Bayport Blue Point. So that is still our ultimate goal as we're building this budget going forward. Saying all that, we're also trying to set it up so that we set our revenue going forward. And we believe after this year, if Ms. Loughlin has been working on it a little bit, and we'll talk more to it at a future date, is based on what we put out this year, we'll also guide what our tax levies or allowable tax levies will be in the future, which we're hoping will be around 2%. So really what we're thinking about right now is we should take a look at it. We're thinking that we can probably fall in somewhere between a 2.5 and a 2.95, 2.99, somewhere around there. Again, we still have work to do. So my suggestion at this time would be to go at the higher end as we're looking at that. Again, because we're not locking into anything. It's information that we've been gathering. Again, we're trying to Also, remember where we're not digging into our reserves at all. That was one of our goals going into this year, which at this point, I still believe that we're going to be able to say that we did not go into our reserves, even though we had this 2 million piece. So I think that we're still going to be okay saying that. So that was one of our goals. But again, we are still at that point where for those 3 years in a row, we had dipped into our reserves, that we don't want to do that. So that's where we're thinking probably in the upper twos is something that we should place in there now. Again, I don't want to be held to it by any means because we still have some work to do at this time of the year, but I think that's probably where we should go at this time. Remember this though, or it's just important to remember, if we're putting in around 2.9, that means what you'll be seeing in Newsday, because we're starting from a -7, right? It's really a 3.6 because you have to get to the 0 first. So that is what you'll see, and then we'll work from there so people understand that. All right, so that's kind of everything in a nutshell. I'll take any questions. Ms. Lachlan and I will take questions and we'll kind of fill you in. But that's what we're thinking right now, again, as of February 26th.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. Any trustee questions? Ms. Conner?
Just thank you for that recap. It was helpful as I'm just doing some chicken scratch calculations over here. So like you said, for every 0.5 increase, that gets us another about 311,000. And if I'm looking at this correctly, it seems like we need to do that about 7 or 8 times to get us the amount of revenue that we need, which would put us somewhere between a 2.7 and a 3.2. So as Dr. Harney just said, I think it's reasonable to come in right around or just under 3. And then knowing that we're still kind of early in the process and we might have some tweaks to that, but I would be comfortable coming in right around there to start.
Any other trustee questions?
Yeah, I'm not so worried about what it comes up in Newsday. I mean, the math to me is the average tax levy went up 1/4 point last year, 1/4%. And if we're in the range of, just under 3%, if I'm looking at a tax bill over 2 years, that's only going up 1.5% in these days of inflation, increasing costs, I think we're doing pretty good.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Dr. Harney?
I just wanted to remind her, and I know everyone was well aware of this, and again, anything over that -0.7, anything over that, we would need a supermajority as a school district as we're going over the allowable, which is 60% in this case. Obviously, our community has been extremely, extremely supportive in the years. Usually our percentage is usually somewhere around low 70%. So that is just something for us to also consider as we have done this. And again, also, if you remember in the past, there were 3 years in a row that we went under the allowable tax levy, which, again, we were trying to be very considerate of what we're doing. That's why I think we have this opportunity at this time to really kind of take a look at everything we're doing and kind of hopefully set us up going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. Any other trustee questions? Not hearing any. Does anybody have any concerns of going out with at least a 299? Any questions? Okay. Whole thing. We want to make sure your husband can see it.
Make sure everybody hears you.
Well, I can't ask him the question. And Tony Sauter, 62 Mill Road, Blue Point. How many times consecutively can you pierce the tax cap? Is this like a one-time bite at the apple?
No, as many times. There's no limit.
There is no limit. If a district chose, which they wouldn't, to do it every single year, they could do that.
And you would, but then when you say a 60% majority, you need a 60% voter majority, not Board of Ed majority.
Correct.
If 100 people vote, 60 people got to vote yes.
So-
Without a piercing 50 people, 51 people who could vote yes.
But like, it's not a one-time thing. Theoretically, we miss the mark, but it's not ideal to do that. But
So-
it's not like we just got one shot at this.
So, well, it depends on how you look at it. So, I mean, to walk you through the whole process, right? So, first of all, as you said, any district can do it at any time. It's not something that districts do on a regular basis, okay? And as you see over the next couple of years, inflation continues to go, so it is something that districts talk about. But as you're looking at taking, going over the allowable tax cap, this would have been a conversation anyway, because remember, we were predicting a negative tax levy anywhere this year. So no matter what, there's only two sources really of revenue, which we've talked about in the past, right? It really becomes the foundation aid or state aid. Most of it's foundation aid, which we have been flat for years now. And then the other place is our tax base. And unfortunately, within our district, it's majority of it is our community, because we don't have a large industrial. That's one of the things that we're talking obviously about within our legislative committee and all those. But those are some of the things that we have to look at. It's either trying to raise revenue, or we're going to have to then start to take a look at programs or other things, because that becomes the only other places to go. It's one or the other. It's revenue or expenditures.
Right. So thank you. You've answered my procedural question.
Thank you so much. Any other trustee questions? Dr. Harney, anything else you need from us?
No, that would be it. Well, if it's the 299, that's what we will submit. And then just so everyone is aware, what they would see as the increase over your allowable tax levy is going to be something like a 3.69. Again, we have some work to do, and we don't plan to be around there, but we want to be sure that we at least have ourselves covered at the moment.
Thank you so much. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Sorry, can I have a motion to go back into an exec session for the employment of a particular individual? Sent by Ms. Conde, second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you so much for coming tonight. Appreciate it.